Greetings, friends. Welcome to week 46 of the Bible in 365. It's hard to believe, but we've got 7 weeks to go in our year of reading the Bible together. And I'm so proud because I know that so many of you out there are on the very cusp of reading through the entire Bible for the first time in your life. So good job getting this far. We've only got 7 weeks to go. Hang in there. The finish line is coming. Now, I want you to pay attention over the next few weeks. In addition to weekly reading previews and the like, I'm going to start helping you think through what's next. We've done all this Bible reading this year. What do we do next to go to the next step so that we can build on this incredible foundation of Bible reading that we've had all year long? All right, well, let's jump in and think about our readings this week. So this week we're going to finish the book of Psalms, and we're going to be turning to the last of the major prophets. That's the prophet Ezekiel. Now, as you get to the end of Psalms, you're going to read on Sunday Psalm 139. And I just wanted to take a moment to highlight this psalm because this psalm is actually really important for our church's ministry. So you may know that at Due Till Church, we have a vision statement that says, we envision a community where everyone is known by name, loved for who they are, and empowered to follow Jesus Christ. And you may be wondering, well, where did we get this notion that it's important in a church for everyone to be known by name? I mean, couldn't we just come to church, worship God anonymously? Well, it's actually Psalm 139 that inspires us in this way, because Psalm 139 tells us that God knows us deeply. God knows when we lay down to go to sleep at night, when we wake up in the morning. God knows our thoughts before we think them and our words before we say them. God is intimately familiar with every part of who we are. And if we matter that much to God, that God would take the time to know us, to stitch us together in our mother's womb, then shouldn't we take the time to get to know each other? And so, animated by Psalm 139, we seek to be a church where we build relationships with each other, where we call each other by name, and where we know our stories, because we believe that each individual story is unique and that God has placed his fingerprint upon each and every person. So I just wanted to point that out as you read Psalm 139. Don't just think about the ways that that psalm can inspire your own faith, but just think about how that psalm inspires our church in our mission and ministry. Now, after we finish the Psalms, we're going to go into the prophet Ezekiel, which is the last of the major prophets, which means it's one of those longer prophetic books. Now, Ezekiel lived during a time of great international upheaval. So the Assyrian Empire had dominated the ancient Near Eastern world for well over 2 centuries. And it was the Assyrians who had kind of broken up the northern kingdom of Israel. Well, during Ezekiel's lifetime, this powerful Babylon, under the reign of a guy named Nebuchadnezzar, just rise to power. They overthrow the Assyrians. They cause the Assyrian Empire to crumble. And Nebuchadnezzar becomes the dominant figure on the international scene. And of course, we already know from some of our previous readings that King Nebuchadnezzar is the one who will ultimately besiege and sack the city of Jerusalem. He'll destroy the temple, lay waste the city wall, and he'll deport some of the citizens of Israel and send them off into exile. So Ezekiel's living during this time. Now, about 10 years before Nebuchadnezzar besieges and destroys Jerusalem, Nebuchadnezzar started a deportation of Israelites from Jerusalem. And Ezekiel was among one of the very first people to be exiled. And it was from his place in exile in Babylon that Ezekiel heard God's call to become a prophet. Now, Ezekiel was a married man, and he was also from a priestly family. And so he was trained in the priesthood. So when you're reading Ezekiel, you'll notice that kind of one of the features of his prophecy is he talks a lot about the temple. And when he envisions the future, he actually envisions a future temple. Temple worship would have been part of his lingo as a priest. Another thing you'll notice about Ezekiel is more so than any of the other prophets, Ezekiel uses sign acts. So he speaks his prophetic message not only with his words, but with symbolic actions. And we'll see that in a variety of places throughout. Now, the primary themes of Ezekiel's prophetic messages is the sovereignty of God. Ezekiel wants to proclaim that no matter what's happening in the world around us, God is sovereign, God is in control. And so, more than 60 times in the book, you'll see that Ezekiel refers to God as the sovereign Lord. And if we wanted to break the book into three large sections, we could see God's sovereignty being proclaimed in three different circumstances. In the first 24 chapters, Ezekiel predicts that Jerusalem is ultimately going to be destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar. But he wants to make sure that the Israelites understand something, and that is that Nebuchadnezzar's military victory is not a feather in Nebuchadnezzar's cap. Rather, it is God using Nebuchadnezzar for God's righteous judgments. God's sovereignty will be revealed even through the destruction of Jerusalem. Now, in the middle part of the book, chapters about 25 to 32, Ezekiel addresses nations beyond Israel, and he speaks about God's judgments against those nations. And his point is to show that through his righteous judgments, God is going to make his sovereignty, his power known to the nations. And then in the last part of the book, chapters 33 to 48, Ezekiel reveals that God's power is going to be made known in the future when God brings restoration and spiritual renewal to the people of Israel. So when you're reading Ezekiel, sometimes you're going to read about some things that are not pleasant, right? It's not pleasant to go through exile. It's not pleasant to receive God's judgment. But I want you to consider this, that what Ezekiel's trying to demonstrate is that no matter how difficult life gets around us, no matter how much it might feel like the world is coming apart, God is always enthroned as the sovereign one. God is always in control. God always has the whole world in his hands. All right, I'll send you forth to dive into this week's readings, and I look forward to seeing you right back here next week for more of the Bible in 365.